Hello and welcome. Oh God, my voice.
And then Chris died.
Hello and welcome to episode 273 of The Crate and Crowbar. My name is Chris Thurston and tonight I'm joined by Tom Senior.
Hello.
And Alex Wiltshire.
Hi.
The gang's all back again.
Woo.
Back again. And speaking of back again and ploughing headfirst straight into news, I guess.
Yes,
I'm just still talking and it's happening. They've announced Darkest Dungeon 2, which is
Top news.
cool. By they, I mean Red Hook, who made the first one.
Yeah.
Thus makes sense they do it again.
It's a good game. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, so Darkest Dungeon is the sort of like gothic horror tactics RPG rogue light, he said, vomiting.
Yep.
About going under a castle and having a heart attack because you saw a ghost.
Getting mental problems.
Yeah, and going to either like flagellating yourself until you felt better, but in a gothy way. New one.
Where could they possibly find horrific, disgusting horrors?
Well, because there are three settings when you're making a kind of Lovecraftian game. You can go
Lava level?
Yep, lava level, casino zone.
Love Lovecraft.
the real Cthulhu was human avarice. No, you can go to Green Hill Zone, which is where they've been, where the Gothic castles are.
Right. Oh, yes.
You can go to,
the sewer level.
well, I was going to say small New England seaside town,
Okay.
and they haven't gone for that one. They have gone, for the third option, and I appreciate this sounds, super reductive, and I really don't mean it to, but they're going beyond the Mountains of Madness, which is the other, I think, sort of great touchstone of Lovecraftian peril, which is, go in somewhere cold. And
But
perhaps,
do you know what this means, don't you, Chris?
What?
Penguins.
Penguins. It does, yeah, probably.
There is a tradition of horrific penguins.
Horrific, yeah, the giant penguins feature in that story, as do sort of wobbly, sort of vegetable monsters from space, possibly, who are themselves afraid of Shoggoths, because who wouldn't be? Which, I mean, I've both ruined At the Mountains of Madness there, but also one of my favorite lines in Lovecraft, which is, in that book, but in that story. But nonetheless, they are sort of positing a kind of, wintry, icy survival scenario.
Can you do the man's voice?
I can't. It's an octave, I think, lower than I can go. I think I can't go that low and, sound like I'm in Deadwood in the way that he is capable of.
Such a good voice.
It's a very, very good voice.
Honestly, for me, it is my favourite part of the game. I kind of find it so relentlessly grim that I can't pursue.
Pretty grueling, isn't it?
Yeah, grueling.
Yeah.
People go mad and then die. That's pretty much the arc they all have.
Yeah.
They might get powerful briefly before the end, but yeah. A lot of repetitive failure.
Yeah.
It's part of the thing. I quite liked it.
So they haven't said much about it, but they have said that they've completely overhauled, that they're going to improve combat, which was already kind of good, but completely overhaul the meta game. And the only clue they gave about this, was that it would be more of a journey than, the first one, which is more about like restoring a town. Like the first one is essentially like a kind of grimdark Stardew Valley, about returning to a family estate, that you've inherited. Yeah, it's like
Planting a few flowers.
Yeah, it's like, you know,
Patting a dog.
and patting a dog. You know, you venture into the tunnels beneath Tom Nook's house and
Find all the shit he's been up to down there.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, they are going for this journey thing. I think that's actually quite a cool idea. And one thing that reminded me though is that it sort of fits into a kind of current tradition of there being quite a lot of sort of, you know, sort of hard-bitten wintry survival themes in games at the moment. For Frostpunk, for example, which is also about how shit it is to be cold.
Yeah, The Long Dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Metro.
Yeah, Metro. Yeah, a lot of, I mean, even parts of, Sunless Skies are about.
Lara Croft, Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Many games.
Snow in games. That's a little bonus for everyone.
But I do like the idea. I definitely, because I think let's have a completely open and honest discussion. How far did everyone get in Darkest Dungeon despite liking it?
I don't know. How do you measure progress?
Did you finish it?
No, didn't finish it. Probably got like a third of the way in.
Did you feel like you'd achieved a kind of mastery or flow with it?
No, I got used to the flow of sort of gradual despair, but I didn't feel like I was mastering anything. Opened a pub or something.
Right.
Gained a new slot in a witch tower. I can't remember what the buildings were about.
Yeah.
But just gradual sort of little bits like that. But yeah, didn't really feel like it was building towards a crescendo.
How about you, Alex?
Yeah, like I don't think I went past the first kind of dungeon area. You know, the first, maybe I got, maybe I unlocked the second one, but like I literally found it so depressing that I couldn't.
Yeah. I had a similar experience, despite really liking it and restarting it loads of times.
Oh yeah, I've tried playing it maybe 4 or 5 times.
That's kind of what I was trying to sound out, like how common is the experience.
And then I forget all the mechanics.
Yeah.
And then feel depressed again.
Yeah. It's a game I haven't finished that I keep feeling like I should. And I think if they had
for me, it's the visuals. I mean, the visuals and the sound effects and the feel, like, fucking love it. Absolutely. And particularly the visuals. Just, it's such a beautiful looking game. And just the timing and the feel of things when it happens. You know, when you get a critical hit and it zooms right in on your weird looking leper. And like, there's nothing better.
There's nothing better than to zoom on a leper. As he's mauled by a werewolf in a crypt. It sounds like an
Edward Lear.
Yeah, exactly. The truth universally acknowledged. Yeah, no, but I don't mean that sound like too down on it, but it's I think we maybe even have had a question this week, which I preemptively answered, which is like games you know are great, but you just bounce off. And I think Darkest Dungeon was one of them for me. Like, I think I had like one 12-hour run that I moved away from and didn't feel like I could ever go back to.
But it's clear that lots of people have, you know, probably min-maxed the game. You know, it's like I've seen many discussions about, you know, how easy the game is, like how gameable it is, and then it's fixed, and then extra, you know, DLC packs and things. Like, it's a huge game now. Like, that part of the reason why I've given up going back to it is that it's so huge now that I don't think I'll ever feel any kind of closure with it.
Yeah.
Cool though.
Yeah. I'm pretty glad there's another one.
Yeah. So it's just really, really good.
Do it all over again.
Yeah. Because I mean, also like they, you know, I think, as you say, like it's a remarkable how atmospheric that is. And it may be sort of, you know, I think learning to like, or simply offering a way to kind of, progress through it in a slightly more linear fashion would be very welcome. So they're certainly, you know, remixing the part of it that I would hope that they would do. I don't know where that sentence was going and it wouldn't end.
It was a bit like playing the game.
Was it?
No, I didn't get that far.
Maybe you'll get a cool Banner Saga style caravan or something.
That's what I had in my mind. Yeah. Although, I mean, structurally that would be the same. You're just going to upgrade your camp and not.
But it'll look a bit
down.
different. It might be a bit lighter, a bit brighter.
Yeah, I think Banner Saga is a good touchstone actually, because I think they're not similar mechanically, but they're both strategy games and they're both quite grim.
Yes.
Like, you know, they're both basically, it's shit in the cold is a common theme of both of them. Banner Saga maybe it's less obviously like a horror thing, but it is pretty, like, it's very somber.
It's
like
deceptively bleak, that game, actually.
Yeah.
If you look at the art style, it's very beautiful and, the vistas are gorgeous, but it's actually a story of death and dismemberment and really bitter rivalries.
Yeah, sort of like it's, you know, the Darkest Dungeon is a game of like, screaming death underground where everyone's sort of howling like 100% of the time because how awful everything is. And Banner Saga is a game of sort of just people just sort of dying and it's like, I guess that's happened, hasn't it? Yeah.
Like
him. He was the nice one with the big beard and he's down a crevasse. Shit. And then you, like, it's which is equally sad, but actually I got through, Banner Saga partly because,
you had a story.
I was never grinding, you know, I was never kind of repeating myself. I was just sort of getting through the next challenge and then the next set piece.
Yeah.
Can I tell you a sad story of cold places? And, it happened to me just before coming out here. I went back and played Bad North for a while and I went back to a save that happened just now. I started playing and it was fairly progressed, and I finally saw that I was really very, maybe 4 or 5 islands to the very end of a run. And, I was doing well. I had 8, warrior bands in it. You only take 4 into each of the levels. 4 of them were almost fully upgraded. Things were looking good. First island, getting back used to playing it because I hadn't played it for maybe 2 months. Did well. Second island, some fucking Vikings with javelins, they was throwing spears or something, very large, heavy things. And he sliced through all of my archers, who were my main thing. They sliced through all of my, they just destroyed all of my defenses. I lost all 4 of my upgraded ones, went to the next island, all 4 of my less upgraded characters, teams, and it's game over. And because I was rusty, and whatever run I'd set up for myself 2 months ago is all over. And that was a shock. Slap to the face. Slap to the face. Bad north indeed. Anyway,
thanks for just, checking in. Yeah. What have a Viking wronged you lately?
Yeah, right in. Exactly. A new segment. Great.
Exactly.
What other haps have been haps happening?
Well, so it's time. It's time. Well, it's time to talk about Anthem.
You've been putting it off.
I've been putting it off.
It's not going to be the most.
Well, I think
positive chat.
No, and I think it's a very interesting situation, and I have a huge amount of sympathy for a lot of people involved working on that game.
The mother bird has kicked the chicklet out of the nest, and it's fallen off the cliff, and it's screaming, and it's pretty.
In this analogy, the mother bird is Electronic Arts.
Yes.
The chicklet is BioWare.
And the cliff is the working class.
The cliff is labour, yeah. And gravity is, the gravity.
It's fiscal schedules.
Gravity is the idea of a service game. And, the forces at work in this scenario, should be noted where the intent and agency is in that metaphor.
Yeah.
And the crow watching beadily from a nearby tree is Bungie.
No, I don't think so, because what are they going to do? Eat BioWare?
It's just interested.
Oh, I see. It's not the circle of life, because it's the circle of life, but if Simba was just flung arm over arm off the top of Pride Rock.
If the monkey just dropped it at the start, and sort of hopes for the best, then maybe. Very different film.
I feel like we've maybe started off on a weird foot.
Yeah, so Anthem is supposed to be, I think, a kind of Destiny-style service game that's designed to be played for a long, long time, where you have javelins, which are these cool mech suits, and you fly around in this beautiful open world with jetpacks, and you shoot stuff with your friends, and then you get loot, and you level up, and kind of go into an end game that's supposed to kind of evolve over many years. And it's their Division 2, it's their kind of Destiny, it's EA's version of that thing. And it is sort of like, it's out, but it's out for people who subscribe to Origin Premier for a week. And then it's, you could just buy the game normally on Friday, probably when you're listening to this.
Yeah.
So we've been playing it, the press has had access to it from, the premium phase. And we've been playing it over the weekend, 4 or 5 days, collectively on gaming. We've put 150 hours into it. And, it is extremely rough. And a type of rough that you rarely see in AAA game development. And it's not just the odd bug here and there. It is a chronically bad experience, throughout, on a technical level. And that's before you even start digging into, the design decisions, the way that the loot is structured and works, the way that the classes are designed, and the kind of inadequate scale to those systems that, feel as though they, at this stage, couldn't sustain the kind of game that Destiny or The Division was. And that's in spite of the fact that actually flying around the world is fucking cool, feels amazing, that a lot of the combat feels really good moment to moment. the strongholds, the kind of dungeons that you go into with 3 mates, and that's about 20 minutes, basically the equivalent of Destiny strikes, are actually like super fun and full of spectacle and big bosses to shoot. There's a core of something there, but what that game, the good version of the game, feels like it's a year away at least from what I've played so far.
Yeah, and I don't know necessarily if it's as achievable. Like, it makes for an interesting comparison with Destiny, because a friend, and friend of pod, Rich McCormick, asked me the other day, is this a Destiny 1 situation where everyone's shitting on it, but if you love it, you know, like, cause I was in the camp of people going, like, who love Destiny 1 from the get-go, despite the problems in all, you know, a lot of aspects of it. And it's like, I was a truther in the sort of, there's something here camp.
Yeah.
And I'm also probably the worst BioWare apologist in that there has been, apart from Rich McCormick, who still holds that title.
Yeah.
And I don't think they can save it.
I think there are fundamental structural problems with the way activities are partitioned up between the zones in the game. So you've got Fort Tarsis, which is essentially a hub, but it's a single-player hub in a game that's fundamentally designed to be played in co-op.
I was really shocked by that.
Yeah, and I don't think the reasons for doing that at all justify it being a single-player.
I heard that it, like, it's not a wide open space. Is that right? Is it for little corridors or something?
It's not a large space. It's
I mean, could you fit 4 players in it?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, right. You could easily fit. It's not like a room. It's a series of squares, town squares, and some like rooms offshooting. There's like a bar area. There's like a place where one of the main Arcanist characters sort of shacks up and lives. And then there's kind of the main square where your javelin is always on display, so you can see it. You know, it makes no narrative sense, really, because everyone's supposed to hate the javelins. And yeah, so the reason is, it's like Monster Hunter World also does this, where they want the hub to be able to change change as the story progresses. So certain places become more populated, stuff gets built, scaffolding comes down, the statues go up, and that's supposed to provide a kind of narrative context for your javelin's journey. The javelins, what they call the mechs. But that fucks with the rhythm of the game so badly if you're trying to play with friends. And it's a game that feels like it's fundamentally designed to be played with three friends. It's a group play game, and it made me appreciate how Destiny gets the flow of that experience completely right. Even though, like, Destiny has loads of loading screens. You know, there's been loads of complaints about Anthem's loading screens, and they are bad. Even I've got an SSD, which improves matters, and there's still like constant interruption. But it's also stuff like mid-mission cutscenes. And, you know, the fact that in order to advance the quest between missions, you have to go back to your own version of Fort Tarsis and talk to people for 5 or 10 minutes before you rejoin and go back into the game again.
Oh my God. I mean, because that was something that Destiny was heavily criticized for. They would lock you into a cutscene and, you know.
But even that, but did it very rarely.
It did it, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and
even then, people, this thing, like, this game feels as though it's been designed in a vacuum, as though Destiny didn't happen 5 or 6 years ago. As though, you know, surely if you're making that sort of game, you're watching forums all the time for that type of game and seeing what grates for people, what friction looks like for people. And Destiny and the Division as well, which changed a fair bit during its lifetime, they found all those friction points, and they spent loads of resources, learning that and then fixing it. And then Anthem just pops out as though they never happened.
What I find doubly strange about this is, I think the other really surprising thing about it is the two halves of what Anthem is, which is like, Destiny style service shooter and also BioWare game. Like, it has big overtures at being the kind of thing BioWare make. Yeah. Conversations where you make some choices that don't matter, but you know that they exist. Characters that are sort of like adjacent to companion characters. They're not really, but they are there. And you can see that the same sort of writer's room style approach to creating a cast of characters and pushing them in front of you is taken with Anthem and in a way that it isn't with Destiny, where it's much lighter on putting lore in front of you. And yet it is, those two halves are completely incompatible with each other. And so, you know, because I feel like, particularly on the storytelling point of view, it is, and I find this really frustrating. Like, it's absolutely lose-lose. Because if you care about the story, then two things are possible. If you get into the story and you care about it, two things are possible. You play solo, which it is not designed for. From mechanically, it is just simply not designed for, and you won't even have the choice to do certain things solo, so, you're going to be pushed into multiplayer anyway. Ideally, you play with your friends, in which case you're going to be in a weird situation where every 20 minutes, half an hour, you have to ask your friends to shut up or quit Discord or whatever it is you're using for voice so that you can go and enjoy the conversations, because you can't go do a 5-minute voiced conversation with an NPC if your mates are chatting about Brexit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which would be normal in any other multiplayer game where people are chatting and, in Destiny, people go to the tower and the conversation continues because no one in the tower has to go, shut up guys, I'm watching a cutscene. That's just rough it just doesn't work. It's not how people play games. And then the flip side to that is if you don't care about the lore and you just want to play, you are forced to go back and sit through these conversations.
Yeah.
And the thing that sits on top of this is, Anthem has been developed, substantially by both BioWare Edmonton and BioWare Austin. And Austin made the Old Republic. And the Old Republic had its flaws, but it actually did successfully marry big BioWare, chunks of BioWare stuff within a multiplayer game that was actually much bigger scale and had multiplayer conversations and had, a big shared communal space. And it had players had ships that, they could go back to and have as a private space where they could advance the plot. But they also had communal spaces and quests that players participated in together without them all needing to be the main character. And that, admittedly, the technology difference between those games is pretty vast, but they've done it before. So this feels like, I just suspect there's a story here somewhere about how this happened. Like, it's striking how it just simply doesn't work, structurally.
Yeah. Loading times can get shorter, bugs can and will be fixed, and so on. Though I think it'll take them a long time to get it into the sort of shape people would expect for a full AAA release like this. But it has fundamental flaws that run much deeper than those technical issues. And it speaks to the loot system as well. Hardly any of the loot items you pick up are visual. There's no visual dimension to them at all. They're just pure numerics. It's about percentage increases to various stats. There's only, for my, I like playing with the Interceptor Javelin, which is a really fast, fun, javelin to use, but it's only got 3 types of helmet that look different, and 3 types of shoulder, an arm, 3 types of chest plate, and 3 types of legs.
Really?
And that's it for the entire game, for that javelin. And these games are about loot progression, about making your character grow and look cool, and your character kind of changing visually, and there being more than just a pure numeric element to your journey through the game. And there's no evidence that it's just not in the game at the moment. And I'm sure they're building it. I'm sure it exists somewhere, and who knows when it will eventually be added. And that there are masterwork items and stuff, weapons that you can pursue, but there are hardly many types of gun even, and certainly not many models for those guns. There's just a fundamental lack of content that you'd expect from this type of large scale.
I kept seeing the word Diablo, Diablo style loot. I kept seeing, and Diablo is a huge table of different.
The loot table's massive, items. And stuff like Destiny 1, for all its problems, it had loads of guns. Yeah. It had loads of armor pieces, had loads of stuff to chase, and a lot of.
It knew from the off that fashion Destiny was going to be a thing.
Yeah, and that had to be a thing. Yeah. And likewise, Warframe knows this, and likewise, so many other games. The Division faltered in this respect because the whole aesthetic of that game doesn't lend itself to creating dazzling space people.
Find a beanie.
New backpack.
That was one of the reasons why I didn't play the Division, was because the
fantasy wasn't appealing.
The fantasy wasn't appealing, and the sense of character progression and earning cool stuff and looking cool wasn't there. And it's not there in Anthem at all. And I've picked up hundreds and hundreds of crafting materials, and I've got fuck all to craft with it. You can craft different versions of all weapons, but there's just no need. There's nothing I want. There's nothing I need to do harder stuff in the game at the moment.
But the Division didn't really suffer from the lack of it because it's fitting with the setting. But this is you'd expect it. I would just assumed it.
Well, but there was a lot of stuff in the Division. It was just boring. It was
just for sure.
Slightly different types of hats.
Yeah.
It was just, guns that you couldn't really see.
You found a fireman's shiny ACOG.
It's oh my God. I'm such high level now. And of course, you don't expect the massive kind of spiky shoulder pads WoW style from the Division. But there's so much scope in Anthem's aesthetic to create cool looking mechs, you know, and I would grind and play that game a lot to make my Interceptor look better, but it just feels like that's not in the game at all. And that's even without discussing the skill system, where each Javelin has like 5 primary skills and 5 secondary skills. And there's, one of the main kind of combat mechanics is comboing. And combos, which is evolved from like Mass Effect 3 and Andromeda.
Yeah, and Dragon Age.
And Dragon Age, yeah, where you kind of inflict an enemy with a status effect, which is called a primer in Anthem sometimes, depending on which bit of item text
and then you apply the base code.
And then you've got detonators, which are incisive attacks that blow up the target and create additional effects around the explosion area, called aura effects, which are different for each class. And so the idea is that your mate freezes a dude and then you zap them with your detonator and they blow up and you do massive damage and it feels great. But wow, like there are so few like combinations available to each Javelin. And I was writing a guide for the Interceptor. There are probably like just 2 viable builds where you can set off combos yourself. And most of the abilities, like half the abilities probably, aren't primers or detonators. So why do you take them when all the massive amounts of your damage source is combos at a high level in strongholds and, you know, higher difficulties? So what's the point in those abilities that aren't even part of that system? It's just a fundamental design problem. Like, why is that appealing? That's before you even get into how poorly expressed the entire system is. And not just the fact that the game doesn't tell you about it. It says, you know, you might get a pop-up piece of text that says, oh, you might want to try a combo. And then it says fuck all about it for the rest of the game. You never hear about it again. So you go into the kind of, Cortex, as they call it, which is their sort of in-game manual, and you leaf through the pages and it says, oh, you know, here's what a primer is, and it's marked by a circular symbol next to the skill name, and here's what a detonator is, and that's marked by a 4-pointed star symbol next to the skill name. And then you go into the Forge, which is where you set up your loadout, and you look at the skills for the Interceptor, and some of them have circles and stars next to them, but they're wrong. They're straight up wrong. So
it's crazy.
There's a detonator called no, it's not a detonator. A skill called Detonating Strike, which you think that's a detonator.
Never cool. Yeah.
It doesn't have the 4-pointed star next to it, but it's called Detonating Strike. It must be a detonator, right? You go into the game, you use it. Not only is it not a detonator, it's actually a primer. It's actually the opposite thing to what the skill name suggests and what any of the iconography around the skill suggests. There's weird stuff in the skill descriptions that it's as though they're talking about a different game. Here's like, you could shoot ghosts out of your face. That's cool. 2 ghosts, hits one guy, homes off to hit another guy, and it does loads of damage. And the skill description says it warps 2 enemies. And warp isn't a thing in Anthem. Go through the Cortex. What do you mean warp? What are you talking about?
So not it warps to as in it goes to.
And as in kind of like it disappears and then kind of
does it mean it teleports to?
No, it's a projectile. It's like a sort of like shit Hadouken that kind of, you know, fires in and then bounces to another guy. And it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And there are sometimes, you know, skill descriptions that would just say, oh, emits a cloud of gas, acid gas. And then it just says aura combo, full stop. What the fuck is an aura combo? Like the whole language around the combos is primers, detonators. What the fuck is an aura combo? It's like, there's sort of remnants of writing from, it feels as though 18 months ago in the development process, or perhaps some of these things were called different things. But it's the fact that just the basic skill descriptions just haven't had an edit pass to normalize the language across the entire skill set and to communicate properly using the iconography they've described to you, what the skills actually do in the game is, I haven't seen anything like it. Like, you don't see this shit in games with 2 people making them. Not to mention, you know, millions and millions of dollars, 5 years, multiple studios, EA's sort of marketing might behind it. It's clown shoe stuff. It's really, really shocking, actually. I haven't played anything quite as ropey.
I don't think I've ever seen you this animated by how shocking something is. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just like...
I think it's so notable how fucked it is. And I know that they'll do these passes, they'll do this stuff, but it just speaks to how it's just not ready to be launched. The idea that this Friday is going to come into contact, not just with PC players, but with console players that don't have SSD drives, with the loading screens that they're going to get. I really feel awful for the developers that are about to get this in the neck, because it's not ready. It's not ready.
I've been concerned already because of the rate. I mean, it's been updated quite a lot over the last few days. It's been out. And I think that people are working very, very long hours to get them out. It's kind of like the speed at which stuff is getting fixed is kind of laudable and yet chilling.
Yeah. Like, I remember playing it, so I played it a little bit longer. I haven't actually been playing in its current, period. I played it about a month prior, and the moment it clicked for me was like doing not strikes, what they called strongholds. Like doing that for the first time. There is something there.
Yes.
And there's like it's so janky all over the place. Like I remember playing it and discovering that, the big javelin, the Colossus, with the shield out.
Yeah.
Where you can sprint into people with your big shield in front of you and sort of stun them by barging into them. And I discovered with a friend that two Colossi running in a circle can solo a lot of early missions without ever firing a shot, because you chain stun everything that enters the washing machine you've constructed. And it's very funny, but it feels like, oh, this isn't what it was intended to be able to do. But then it all kind of came together for me playing those stronghold things where you have big sort of open arena environments that are much bigger than anything necessarily Destiny would do because of the verticality and the movement powers you've got, where, and it's this glimmer of something where, you'd have like the interceptor, the cool, fast, small javelin, it's like literally shoot off like Iron Man to deal with turrets set into the canyon wall because they're in a good position to get up and melee and beat up the turrets, while heavier javelins sort of, bunker down and get into a cool firefight in the center. And that combination of vertical mobility and, all these like sort of the combo system and things, it feels like there's the first half of something there that actually also feels very pointedly like an evolution of Mass Effect Andromeda's combat system.
Yes.
Which was given credit, but I still think it was better than a lot of people gave it credit for, because it got lost behind that game's other kind of more public flaws that they'd, there's this other side of BioWare that have been quietly developing pretty good jetpack co-op shooter games for like a couple of years, from Mass Effect 3 onwards, right? Like,
yeah, definitely.
And so they have this DNA, right? You can say that to BioWare thing. It's not just kissing. You can say, they're really interested in interesting 3 to 4 player co-op shooting experiences, because Mass Effect 3 has such good multiplayer. This happened, and this has got the first half of it, but I also completely agree that it's so ropey, and like the loot system is so boring. Like, it's not just that things don't even look different. The stats aren't even that exciting.
Yeah.
Cause it's like, it's really opaque what they change. You don't really know why it's important. And particularly, one of the weaknesses of the combo system is that is ultimately, as you say, more important than, if it was a trade-off between I can have the ability that combos in a powerful way, or the ability that just is powerful, but that, I trade off reliability for combo power, something like that. There's something there balance-wise, right? You could design a system around that.
Yeah.
But it just, it's not there. And go on, Alex.
What's the kind of long, what would you, if this is something that's running for weeks and years and months, what are you doing every day? Like, even from the start, Destiny had, like, you could do story missions. When you first get it, you're doing the story, the campaign stuff.
Yeah.
And then you're doing, like, multiplayer, which could take the, sort of Crucible, sort of, team deathmatch stuff and various other modes there. You could be doing strikes, which are kind of more involved, dungeon runs with friends, or you could do the raid, or you could do, there are multiple strands of what you could do, even from the very start of that. Like, and I don't know what do you do? Like, is there a variety in this game? Because there's not a multiplayer game level. Is there like competitive multiplayer?
There's no PvP, no. They're going to add probably their equivalent of a raid or a cataclysm, or I think it's called, which is on their roadmap for this year. And did the Vault of Glass launch with Destiny 1?
It was a month later.
Oh, so it's only a month later. So it was
but everybody knew about it. Like, it was announced. It was like,
and it was teased in the story.
It was coming. Yeah.
And there's
which felt important. Like, you've got to tell people that's like a mega part of the game.
Yeah. And there's a gear ramp up to it as well that you're chasing in Destiny 1 to get there.
Like, it was a really clear road, wasn't there?
Yeah, the Destiny 1's like late game loot system was busted. Like, I think I don't want to like rose tinted glasses Destiny too much. Like, they made loads of mistakes. But
you knew there was a road, and like the road might have been a bit broken, but like, you know, at least you know where it was going.
It was inelegant, but there was a clear, like, this is what the next step is. Yeah.
Yeah, so in Anthem you've got 3 strongholds, in the game.
They're strikes, are they?
They're basically strikes. And
there's 3 of them.
There's 3 of them.
I did one of them and I thought, like, oh Jesus.
Yeah. And one of them's just the last single player mission.
No.
And the other one is original. So there's those. And the other thing is quick play, which, match makes you into other people's games within the story to help them out. And you get bonus XP for doing that, just to keep everyone's games populated. But they're story missions you played. So you're repeating story missions or you're doing the strongholds.
So there's a whole mode that's devoted to ensuring that people's teams are filled.
Yeah. And quick play is what was broken this week. That's why people were getting match made into much higher level missions than they should have been in, because they pressed quick play, and level 3 people were being match made into games which it was just straight up bug. I think it's probably been fixed now. Yeah. But yeah, it's quick play. It's doing story missions. There are some side quests I'm still polishing off. I finished the story. I'm about level 23 out of 30.
So it's like, of course, I forgot about the BioWare thing. So basically you're like talking to characters and you're getting quests.
Yeah. And I don't know like how long that track will run. But I'm still on it. There's still like a couple of quest givers doing their thing, and they're all kind of nice short stories.
That's quite content heavy. Like, you know, cause you can see where, you know, Bungie and Warframe and, you know, these games know how difficult it is, you know, expensive it is to make content. So they just make content which is able to spool itself out over long periods with nice rewards, like where the repetitive actions feel fine because you get a nice reward at the end.
Yeah, potentially, but it doesn't tell you what reward you're going to get in Anthem. So in the end game, they give you a huge checklist of free play of stuff to do. So, you know, I'll do X number of strongholds or do X quick play. And there's also free play where you just zoom around the world and there are kind of world events and you loot stuff. The list is enormous. It's like do 100 world events. 100! And you just look, and it doesn't tell you what you get at the end of it. There's no sense of reward. Like, Destiny says you're going to get an exotic blueprint. We're not going to tell you what it is necessarily, or you're going to get exotic thing.
But you know the grade.
There's a pot of gold at the end of that thing. And there's I know from reading around that masterwork weapons are like significant loot in this game. The game hasn't told me about it, and I finished the story and I'm in the end game. So it's again just total lack of communication with the player about what the game is about or what the trajectory is. And you suspect that, you know, who really knows what the trajectory of the game is, even within that studio, like that they're definitely planning to put a raid in or some sort of cataclysm, whatever that means. But apart from that, it's just.
Can you see the space in which that big raid would take? Like, I think, you know, you could see the blueprint of what a raid might be in Destiny where, like, you know, there are these kind of extremely tricksy sort of scenarios where team would be asked to kind of.
Yeah, so not to get too much into the story, which is very, very just kind of made up sci-fi concept heavy. There's the anthem of creation that everyone's chasing, which is basically this kind of song of creation that refuses to be controlled, but lots of people want to control it anyway to make stuff. But sometimes it goes out of control and it makes big monsters.
Somebody goes in with bagpipes and
settles it down. And it's your job to silence.
Anyway, this is Wonderwall.
Have you heard the anthem of creation?
So some characters in the thing have, and it's not like the best experience they've ever had.
Yeah.
It warps and changes them and all that kind of stuff, and makes boss monsters. Basically, is what it's made to do. So you can see yourself being sucked into one of those, into a different realm.
The opening of the game is essentially a cataclysm.
Yes,
right?
that's
like
right.
The prologue.
Yeah. And so it's like seeing into a place where reality is all a bit wrong and weird, and here's a big man called a Titan, and he tries to crush you with his big punches. Yeah. And then so you can see how this stuff would happen, and it would look like the game does look awesome. Like, it looks spectacular.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful game. I wonder, like, it's almost the fidelity of that game has hurt it when it comes to loading times and that kind of stuff, and the huge number of transitions you have to make between various screens. That's another flaw with the way the game is kind of partitioned up, is that when you're out in a mission or just doing free play, you can't look at your inventory or what you're wearing, and you certainly can't change your loadout or anything, because all of that stuff is locked behind in the forge. which is behind several loading screens, like inside Fort Tarsus that you have to go into, and all of your tweaking happens there. And like,
well, there's no loot, there's nothing to tweak.
So there's, well, there is that, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, Warframe does this as well. You have to do your loadout in Warframe before you go on a mission, but a mission is like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's 5 to 10 missions of going down a slide.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you go down the tunnel and that's it.
It's just whee! And then you get some prizes.
Yeah. And it feels, and the dopamine goes off in your brain and it's good. But yeah, the idea, like, from Destiny, I'm just so used to be able to just tweak my loadout while loading screens are happening, or while, you're waiting for something. It's just an essential
Well,
part
it's even
of
the strange decision that you don't see what loot you got.
No.
You see you got a rare item, but you don't know what it is until the end of the mission. Which is a level of abstraction that I don't know loot can survive. It feels like an exercise in like...
Well, but like you do have, you have the engrams you have to decode.
But
identify.
Yes, but you also do get, specific loot.
Yes, true.
And there is also a much clearer sense of, a legendary engram is exciting because I have a history and what kind of thing that might be. This just feels like, it feels like, several, decades ago now, a very, very, very smart person at Blizzard decided to make common items green, rare items blue, epic items purple, and legendary items yellow. And this apparently was some sort of like magic key for the human like limbic system. And but that was new. That was a new thing, right? And then it was just adopted by every loot game since.
Yeah.
And now we've reduced it down to the point that you just need to show me a blue light. and I'm like, yes, I did do well.
That's all it takes now.
And like,
I thought you were going to say that they're not behaving, they haven't used the right colours.
No, they have they've used exactly the same colours. That's what I'm saying. They've used exactly the same colours, but they've just reduced it to those colours. Like there's nothing else. It used to be like all of it from the stats to
and just so the loot your character has, I think when you top level, you have 7 slots for just basically buff squares, little rectangles of stats that you put in your character sheet. And loads of the loot that drops is just those, where it's just like, oh, this will add X to your shields, X to your armor, plus...
Eggs to your shield, eggs. It just adds eggs to your shield.
And then... this game sounds pretty good.
A few like little buffs here and there to like elemental damage or something. But there are like 6 separate slots on your character for just numbers stuff. And that's not... I mean, it is loot. Ultimately, it's all 1s and 0s or whatever. But there has to be more of a greater dimension than just simply slightly buffing stats here and there.
Well, that's, I mean, going back to Destiny again, like and actually Diablo as well. Like where there's a slightly cruel feeling sometimes, but there's a real interesting tension between. We talked about this a few weeks ago. The stuff that looks nice and the stuff that does nice, and that's part of like an engagement with the game. Like, Christ, I really like that hat, but this one's better. Like, and that's been in loads of RPGs, sort of, if you get rid of that, if you abstract it down to numbers, like, you're never going to get that.
It's funny, isn't it? It feels like in seeing it done wrong, apparently, just because from the way it feels, you start to understand what the limits of those abstractions are. Because we have all accepted now that a hat can make you better at things. That is stupid. Yeah. That is stupid. Every video game does this. It's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense in sci-fi games. It doesn't make sense in fantasy games. You put on a hat, you're strong now because the hat has strength on it. There's no way of putting yourself meaningfully in the mind of the character, like trying to feel what that feels like. There's no visceral sense there. There's nothing being communicated, but we accept it because you're kind of used to it. And you're like, well, I get numbers and a better looking head out of this transaction with reality. But there's a step beyond that where it's just like, I've changed the number plate on the back of my space. And now headshots do 3.5% more energy damage. And there's clearly a point where you stop accepting it. You know what I mean? Where you stop feeling anything because of the number weighing. It stops working.
You need your little sort of avatar.
You need the paper doll.
You need the paper doll.
You need the dress up. You need the...
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a sense that
it's weird. It is totally bizarre that they haven't learned from, or apparently been even looking at the stuff that solved this stuff, or
including the games they've made.
Yeah. And stuff like, taking missions in the field. Destiny did this brilliantly with bounties.
Yeah.
So you pick up bounties in town, you pick up loads of them in Destiny 2 now, you fill a whole big, beautiful grid with these bounties, and then they'll just give you little kind of micro rewards as you go about doing your stuff.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely fantastic. Like, just steal it. Just steal the system.
I guarantee you, if they had that do 100 world events thing, but it was something you went up and picked up from town, as in the quest to do it, and there was a purple light on the bottom of the thing, you would feel better
Something
about it.
for it.
You would feel better about it. Like, it's so much of it is presentation, but
it matters.
And it's frustrating. Like, and I suppose I appreciate we've been talking about it for a good half an hour now, and I think it's rare on this podcast that we dissect something like this, I think. And not in a bad way. It's just, you know what I mean? It's rare to be energized by frustration.
It's because even without the BioWare element, and like I love BioWare games historically, but even without that, it's so rare to see a game released like this.
Yeah.
As I said before, like, it's really, really unusual. And you're right, there must be big stories around this. Like, for some reason, EA had to put it out right now, 2 weeks after Apex Legends was just, turbo launched and became a viral success.
That feels more like it makes sense now. Just in some dark way, it feels like this is being sent out to die. Like, I don't know why. And I've got theories, but it's just, you know what I mean? It feels now that it's like, there was no danger that Apex Legends would steal Anthem's thunder, because if anything, they need a success to run alongside this not being ready to be out. And obviously the proper answer is probably, well, don't release it then, and certainly don't charge £15 a month for pre-access to it.
Premium access, and then it's probably £50 or £60 for the game itself.
Even that has really wound me up, because I actually had it on pre-order, because despite my problems with it, I had some faith that, obviously, I think that it would be better, I think. And also, but also beyond anything else, for all of its problems, I got the impression, which I don't think is an unreasonable impression, that this is going to be a fun 20 hours that I might play with mates, and I'll see the story through to the end and kind of get it, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
And in the grand cost benefit analysis of it, maybe that's not worth the 50 quid they're charging for it, but it's like, I like the flying a lot. There's enough in there to just play through it. But a big part of that is sharing that experience with your mates, right? Like, I had this feeling that this is going to be one of those honeymoon period games that we're all kind of playing for 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah. And
then we kind of move on from, but I sort of figured that was actually worth it. But I didn't want to subscribe to Origin What's It, and I'm not a journalist anymore, so I don't have a code. And what that meant was, loads of my friends are playing it and are miles ahead of me. So I can't really play with them, and it's not even out yet. And therefore I will say this, I had an excellent experience with EA customer support, where I had to actually live chat with somebody, and I said, look, I just don't want to play this anymore. Like, the fact that all my friends have played it mean I don't want to play it. And they're like, okay, full refund, like completely refunded and removed the pre-order from my Origin account. Their customer support was very good. But it was like, but one thing I was trying to do is like, your structure, the way you've released this is absolutely drained my desire to even give it the time I was planning to give it. And that was even as somebody who'd already played 10 odd hours of it and knew its flaws. And it's just like, that is so like,
that is a serious problem, isn't it?
It's a serious problem. Like, there's a time-honored tradition of the night before release beta reset, where loads of your mates put loads of time into the beta, and everyone waits by the starting gun for the MMO to go racing off into the starting zone again. And yeah, people with the experience will maybe progress a little bit faster, because they don't need to read the story and they know how to level fast and stuff. But launch day in an MMO, which is sort of what this is like, is exciting because everyone is beginning the game. Buying it tomorrow, just like, I mean, and obviously I'm in a particular situation where my friends have all rinsed it because they're either games journalists or they've subscribed, so they've been playing it early. But like, I was actually kind of sad about how, like, it almost felt like that had sort of stolen the game from me. Not that I blame any of my friends for it. I don't blame you, Tom, for playing it for work. That's not it. But it's like, I had it in my head that like, it's probably going to be a bit of a failure, but I will probably have fun playing it with Tom and co for a couple of weeks. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, now I don't want to do that because it doesn't make sense for me at level 3 to be bouncing around saying like, well, what can we do together? Probably not a lot. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
definitely.
That's just a stupid decision. And I say that, don't say that lightly. It's not good.
Yeah. I think I'm sort of left wondering what it could look like in a year. You're always trying to extrapolate from where it's at. And, you know, this is the worst the game's ever going to be. You know, trying to see the right side of this. As a public player, it's the worst it's going to be. Because all they're going to do is fix bugs and stuff. And it's really like how much financial backing is it going to get? Are they going to keep the doors open for a year? Are they going to really, are they going to bankroll serious design changes? There's no doubt they'll add loads and loads of loot to it. It's just not in the game at all yet. There's no doubt they'll add loads of, like over the course of years, they could add more and more interesting events and, you know, stuff to do in the world. Is there enough there to justify it? It's really, really hard to tell. And,
I mean, I would say the Division felt pretty ropey, insubstantial, like, progression seemed kind of non-existent or pointless in that game at the start. And Ubisoft obviously put a shitload into it and have continued to, and obviously it's the same going. So it'd be really bizarre if this didn't happen here.
I'd hope so.
I don't know if it would be bizarre.
Oh yeah. Well, if it has been sent out but why would you bankroll?
Why would you release it? Because it's going to be a black mark against one of your premier studios and the company in general. You have investors that are going to go, what the fuck? You know, you should have sunk that cost.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think EA are in that position, right? Like EA's line in the sand is, well, we make more money than this in 8 seconds in FIFA Ultimate Team. Why should we? Why do we need to get this over? Like, seriously, like, if you're in that position where your company is so heavily bankrolled by FIFA and Madden, basically, like, is there the same impetus to...
But they have a brand to upkeep, and that probably is valid. Yeah, but no.
Do they? Does, like, and this is a serious question. Does a company with the, often undeserved reputational issues that EA have, do they have a brand to protect?
Yes, because they have investors who want to be associated with something that's positive, you know, that looks a bankable thing. Like, the numbers aren't the pure thing that's going on here. Like, you know, there's emotion that goes into any kind of financial.
There is.
Kind of transaction.
You're absolutely right about that, but I just can't see a recent example when EA have acted on that.
Well, I mean, I think that it's easy to judge. It's difficult to judge that sort of well from the outside.
Sure, like, but what I would say is like, I mean, well, actually, no, I can think of an example of it. I think the last example of this would be Battlefront 1. I think basically, you know, the decision for Battlefront to be a purely service game, was a business one, and it fits with EA's broader strategy. It took John Boyega tweeting, "Where's the single player campaign?" for Battlefront 2 to have a single player campaign. That was kind of like a fan pleasing, you know, and sort of licensor pleasing effort that went, I think, probably unnoticed in the end because of the loot box controversy about that game. So they kind of walked straight out of one thing into another. But I think that's probably an example of what you're talking about, like the kind of emotional rather than the practical. But still, like,
I mean, because if it was a pure financial thing, I would say they'd have just binned it. Now they know what the problems are.
Maybe, but I think the flip side to that is, I think EA have quite a poor track record in the last couple of years that they haven't really managed to shake, of like having their prestige games. Like, I think this is a big difference between EA and Ubisoft to some extent. Like, Ubisoft tend to like have series that they really sort of, and they're both big businesses. It's a business at the end of the day, but there's sort of a sense of like, this is a flagship thing, so we'll kind of protect it. Whereas, I don't really see that out of EA. Like, there's a much stronger kind of everything getting folded into this service mechanism. They've cancelled the same, like, probably the most, sort of popular thing they could do right now would be a sort of robust single player Star Wars game, because they've got the license to end all licenses. And they've cancelled the same one twice.
Yeah.
Like, they took it, like, they cancelled Amy Hennig's version of it, gave that to Visceral, another well-liked studio, because the years of EA being the company behind things like Dead Space, that's gone. Like, you know, it feels like the years of EA being the company behind Mass Effect is gone. Like, where is that game? Where is I've got Origin installed because I love BioWare games, ironically. Like, you know what I mean? Like, where is that coming from now?
But the fact that they've binned, like, I think the fact that they've binned those previous Star Wars games, it's sort of is an illustration of what I feel about them, which is they are not afraid to get rid of stuff that they don't want to, like, that they don't see a future in. But when they do have a game they have a future in, look at Battlefront 1, they released Battlefront 2, quite soon on. Like, I think that this is going to be, I mean, obviously this is all conjecture and like we could do a nice little bet on it, but for funsies, but like, I think that they will, I don't think they release stuff that they're not going to invest in over a long period.
But
because they need those banner games, because the release schedule has slowed so much among the big companies. Where are the other big EA games?
Yeah.
If it didn't have Anthem, its portfolio is a big game down. Like, and then it is
but
just
this is the thing, though, and I wonder if this is like a truth about how money gets made that we're slow to appreciate. That, like, they're making more and more money out of fewer and fewer games. So why would you make those extra games?
Again, I think it's about a plausible portfolio. Like, it's about the investors. Like, I just think almost every decision the big companies make now is about how do we wank the investors. And
I agree with that. I do agree with that. And but I think the thing for me is, like, I would almost flip on its head and say, how do you justify to invest? You can go to investors and say, this is the bajillion pounds we've made from FIFA. Everything else we do costs more and makes less.
But then, like, but with FIFA, you've got the problem. Like, you've got sort of, what if, says investor, what if FIFA don't give you the license next year? Yeah. Like, that series dies.
Like, this is conjecture, but I wonder if, like, I think if you were EA, you'd probably live in existential terror of that scenario. Yeah. But that's the thing that surprises, and that, I can't imagine the Star Wars license is an easy thing to have, and like, like, that's another thing. But I just don't see the coherent effort to replace it with something. I imagine there is a desire to replace it with wholly owned properties. But yeah, I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe they will pump support into Anthem to try and make it happen. I haven't really seen that much support from it in terms of like advertising and things. I don't know if that's just me.
I don't know. I haven't really. I mean, I felt there was quite a lot in the past few months.
There's that Neil Blomkamp short.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to help anything. You've watched it. That doesn't tell you anything about the game. They've done like a sprint. Right at the last minute, but really, it's not for the size of this game. You'd expect like a sort of 12-month ramp up, bigger showing at E3, press previews, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Hasn't happened for this game.
I mean, maybe that's.
It speaks of a lack of confidence in it.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, so the reason why you'd have a game as a service game is that you can continue charging people various ways for that, and I don't see that how this game is going to make ongoing money in the state it's in, like, or for ages.
Yeah.
Because it does have a microtransaction store. There's 6 things in it, and they're all crap. And there's no reason why you'd want them, because, like, the loot system is so bare.
Have some blue, some yellow, $6.99.
Yeah, well, it's like, oh, here's 3 armor pieces. They look very much the same as the very limited armor pieces you have access to already.
Yeah. Also, I think the thing I've just forgotten when we're talking about, like, whether or not it makes sense for EA to support it, is they just launched Apex Legends. If they need to wank a shareholder today, they can do it by saying, look, we've just made the thing that's come closest to, like, being called a Fortnite killer that anyone has made ever.
Yeah. No,
absolutely.
Absolutely. There is that, but
please ignore this little chicklet we just kicked off a cliff.
Yeah.
In its Javelin class exosuit. Like, it's, yeah. And this is a downer. Like, there's no way except a downer. Sure. But like, yeah, I really want to read the interesting post-mortem. Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not.
But hopefully retrospective, not post-mortem. But whatever's written after this about what actually happened. There's even just little things. I don't know if this is, I wanted to pick your brain about this, Tom, because it really bothered me when I played it. It's not really, I'm not going to actually spoil anything for Anthem's story, but I think one thing we actually haven't touched on materially, I think you mentioned it briefly, that it's mostly a story of big nouns fighting. But I was surprised by how, unmoved I was by its storytelling. And as I have said, I'm incredibly movable by BioWare games, right? Like, just give me a big castle a hill to die on and some aliens to kiss, and I will do both. And I'll make difficult choices about which other aliens I'm going to send to die on different hills. Like, that's all I want.
It's always very, very difficult to introduce players to like a whole new universe, a whole new world without kind of letting the player sort of, bathe in it for a bit. And, with Mass Effect 1, like, there's so much talking that has to happen before you, like, that has to set out the parameters of the world, and, they have to explain to you what mass relays are and what, Mass Effect is, as a driving force in the universe. Eventually who the Reapers are, but they really drip feed it to you because an RPG, single player RPG, can completely control the way information is slowly delivered and built up.
And it's also about you. It's worth it because this is a world that's being laid out for you to enjoy, not for profits to be rendered upon. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So Anthem does a terrible, terrible job of giving you any sense of like stakes around what you're doing, especially not even personal stakes, but stakes for the characters around you.
Yeah.
Who you've only just met and who then just promptly vanish immediately out of the story.
I wanted to ask you, this is the thing I wanted to ask you about.
Yes.
So, extremely minor spoilers, but Anthem's opening is extremely strange because you have a prologue where you're kind of introduced as the new rookie. And it's kind of big and dramatic, and you're introduced to your squad of pilots. There is a sort of like there's a type of, and I say this fondly, but like one way or another, completely fucking doomed mentor figures in BioWare games.
Right,
You got Duncan in Dragon Age, and even Captain Anderson in Mass Effect to a degree, right? People who are either going to die or you're going to be separated from, but are there to be like, you're special, but also dumb. Let me explain things to you. Bye.
Dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Dad's gone.
Dad drops you off at the park.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like,
a fun,
and the dad that drops you off at the park, they're all there. And then they all vanish from the story almost completely, as far as I can tell. And you're somewhere else months later doing something else under different circumstances.
So, there they are.
Oh, okay. And that's weird. And then about 2 or 3 hours in, you go and talk to a character that you've barely met, but who seems like, and the only way I can describe it is like designed enough to have been important in a different version of the game. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like, I haven't interacted with this person much, but someone clearly spent a lot of time making him.
This person's been mocapped.
Yeah, exactly. So, but okay. And they then say like, do you know what happened in this battle?
Oh god, yeah.
And then you watch a cutscene that's about 5 minutes long about a battle that took place somewhere else. So the battle takes place it didn't take place in the city that you are in. It didn't take place involving any of the characters that you know.
No.
But it does involve the villains, and it's kind of how the real villains are introduced. And, it's quite a cool cutscene, but it doesn't work because, it's really well made, but it doesn't work because you're being told like, this person went out and they died on the field that day, but you don't know who that is. You're introduced to them in the same sentence that they gotten rid of. So it's just like, oh, that's a shame. And, one character that you've like half met is functionally like turns out to be the protagonist of this cutscene, and they're doing things. They see the villains, and there is also, in addition to Dad dropping you off at the park, there is another BioWare tradition that is also extremely important, which is I've just seen an erudite but villainous man put his hand into a beam of light, and now I'm asleep.
Yes,
like that is also a firm BioWare tradition, and that always happens to the player character. That never happens to a rando. That is always you that sees the obelisk or whatever it is, and someone touches it, and there's a flash of light, and then you wake up, and now you're you. Like, and that happens to this random other character who's otherwise just standing by a door, like, hello. And it feels like literally like, hello, I'm the protagonist from a previous version of Anthem.
Right.
Like, and that whole cutscene, it's beat for beat the end of Act 1 or maybe end of Prologue, BioWare cutscene. It's like the destruction of the Normandy, or the destruction of Haven in Dragon Age Inquisition, or the Ostagar sequence in Dragon Age Origins, or
fucking space station in KOTOR that you start on.
Yeah, the space station in KOTOR that you start on.
That blows up is
and the Endor Spire in KOTOR, right?
Yeah.
They do this in every single game, and it's always the protagonist. And so I was just looking at it going like, did you repurpose this from a version of the game where this was the end of the opening sequence?
Right.
Because it's the only thing that makes sense to me. Because it's such a weird moment otherwise. Because literally you fade out of that cutscene and it's like, anyway, that's what happened. But I guess this is your problem now. You, a different person. Like,
yeah.
And it's just, super weird to me. And they don't make a cutscene that lavish for anything else. So why? Unless, is it?
They also, in the opening sort of cutscene, they introduce, Faye and Haluk, who are just the two most interesting characters in the game.
Yeah.
And they're just really brilliant.
One of them is Thandi Newton, right?
Yeah, they're brilliantly acted. Like the motion capture's amazing. I think they've just really kind of taken on board what people said about Andromeda and, put a lot of resources into getting great motion capture for these cutscenes. And then they just sort of go away from the story for a bit. And then the story is completely crap until they come back.
Right.
And when they're back, there's momentum, the stakes, because you actually care about them. They're, you get a connection with the characters because they're well acted and, well written and interesting.
That's good. I didn't get that far. So
I think it's worth playing. For me, the final third I quite enjoyed, actually. It's faffed about for ages. When it actually, gets the, all the characters back together, it picks up a bit. And sure, it's still sci-fi fantasy nonsense, but as long as there are characters I'm interested in there doing stuff, I'm happy to put up with any old bollocks.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, a lot of the missions, some of the side missions become really fun. Again, I think the last sort of 40% of the story is way better than the first 60%. And even the side quests, the side characters, kind of stuff happens to them. So to give the game its fair shake, there are character arcs in this game. There are characters who learn things and change, stuff that, makes stories happen. That all does happen in this game, even though it's wrapped in a lot of sci-fi nonsense. And that's kind of the thing that Destiny 1 really struggled with, where you didn't really get that kind of, you couldn't latch onto any characters because it was just like the Exo Stranger who would appear and then disappear and everything's all mysterious and there's no real kind of sense of who anyone is or what they're going through. And this is the stuff that Destiny 2 corrects a little bit. That stuff is in Anthem's story. It's actually a story and it's unsatisfying in a lot of ways, but it's there. The DNA of some cool BioWare stuff is there. And, right the way down to, sort of side characters who just skip about 15 years of friendship while talking to you to just break through loads of privacy barriers and just straight up tell you what their deal, what their fucking deal is.
Yeah.
Which is a classic BioWare thing. It's the thing in the Citadel where two people come up to you and ask if they should have an abortion. It's like, whoa! And there are a couple of things like that in Anthem as well. I won't spoil what they are, but it's ridiculous. And it's always been, I won't say it's a flaw because it's interesting, but the more realistic performances get, the more weird that is. They just suddenly flomp their biggest personal problem at your lap and say,
it either feels far more awkwardly expository or too personal.
There's some classic, I blame Far Cry 3 Vars, performance for this. There's some classic just kind of overacting to a single camera. Over gesturing and really just kind of, theatrically moving around it as it pans. It's just, it's so stupid.
Technology allowed characters to put one leg up on a chair and lean into you in a couple of years ago. And that was we weren't ready.
And it's almost too much. There's, every pilot has a cipher who's you kind of, the guy back at base who's in your ear radio instructions. A nerd, the nerd one, yeah. And, it's a really, really annoying British bloke in, Anthem.
Yeah.
And he I kind of admire the capture, the kind of motion capture of it and the gesture capture and the fact that they are obviously capturing a physical performance by an actor, but it's so kind of over emotive with his whole body is just flapping around the place and gesturing madly. It's just be a bit more naturalistic kind of performances.
It's a really tricky thing because it's a man vibrating on the knife edge between Alistair from Dragon Age, much loved, and Danny Wallace's character from Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, he sounds
and he's
like Danny Wallace.
It's which way is he going to go? And then and it's I found that he's oscillated between that was quite a funny delivery or a nice wink or something because they can do that now with the face tech.
They can,
but then occasionally it would go into it's Wallace or whatever his name is.
Yeah,
Sean.
all the characters you interact with for any length of time are interesting eventually, which is a BioWare promise, I think.
Yeah,
they tend to.
We will make you care.
They tend to make good on eventually.
Yeah,
one way or the other. But I mean, it's just like little moments in a long. Like it took me about like 23 hours to get through the campaign, and that a lot of that was very slowly walking around Fort Tarsis, the hub, and having quite a lot of boring conversations with people about the fact they can't get any grain anymore and stuff like that. So it's not all gold out there.
Anyway, I'll climb into my gleaming chrome battle glove and go fight a man I can't see.
I think the idea is supposed to be that you're doing kind of community outreach because everyone hates the freelancers. So you're supposed to be, a positive force and representing them and trying to bring them back to, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Like there's not enough build up for it.
I also feel like the one fantasy word they couldn't make happen is the word freelancer.
Yeah.
The way that game lands on the word freelancer, because it's a real thing. Like obviously guardians are real things, but you can land on guardian because we kind of accept it as a freelance word. Freelancers are like people who work in their pajamas. That's what that means. I have done it for a long time. It's that's what that means. So when it's like, and then there came the freelancers. I can't.
Oh, not those guys.
Oh, no. They're also, they're called freelancers before the major event happens that makes them this scattered band of people who have to take work to get by, which is again, it's just narrative, just a kind of weird narrative fuck up. Like, they're the people who risk their lives to go out and shut down these anomalies, and they're not called the champions or the guardians or anything like that. They're called freelancers because that's what they eventually end up being after the cataclysm. So it's like it's nominatively backwards, that whole thing, which is just again how the story.
Then came the independent contractors. You've had some real cowboys in here, they'd say, looking at the dissolution or whatever it's fucking called. The Anthem's all fucked in here. You're going to need a new one.
Oh, Anthem. It's a sad story. We've talked about it a lot, but I think we're going to end up talking about it a lot over the next year because it's going to be an ongoing story.
Yeah.
Whatever
maybe
happens.
I will go back. Alex.
Hi.
Have you liked the thing you've played this week? Please say yes.
Please say yes.
I mean, yeah, kind of.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
I don't know. Well, I mean, I have not liked it. I've been playing.
What is it? Let's start with that.
I've been playing Ace Combat 7.
Ooh.
Which is
From climbing in a jet.
So weird.
Pretending to be a plane.
It's so weird. So it's interesting to talk about story so much because, Ace Combat has a lot of story, like a shit lot of story.
Yeah.
In fact, there seem to be at the moment 2 stories going on at once, which is quite, ambitious for a game about planes. Because I think that over the years, I've steadily realized that it's really difficult to tell stories about planes. Just a bit of background.
If life has taught you anything.
There's always, I've always been kind of weirdly fascinated by, flight sims and flying games because of a bit of wish fulfillment. Probably a bit of wish fulfillment because, like the first one I played was fuck's sakes.
Sorry. I'm very sorry.
One of the first games I ever played was Spitfire, flight sim for the BBC. So this was a wireframe game, and like I watched my uncle, and I wasn't able to perform this myself, but he flew under a bridge in it, and I thought, oh my god, 3D. Incredible. This is what games should be. And like, I was just amazed. And so I've always had that kind of
grenade rolls down a hill moment was Uncle Under a Bridge.
Yeah. My uncle under the bridge. But, and then I kind of like, I remember playing, stuff like, F-14 Tomcat, on 386s and stuff like that. And, again, it's amazing. And like back then, like then you could red out and black out and things, because they had physics in it, except for they weren't, but they like, it was, it was a simulated environment. So I've always had this kind of fascination for them. And like Ace Combat is gorgeous. Like it is like, I always wanted that sort of seeing the world kind of below you and incredible looking clouds and it's very much an arcade, flight sim. I've not played any of the Ace Combats before. No, I think I played one on like briefly on console like years ago. I don't know which one I was, 5 or 4 or God knows what. So don't really have much experience with the series, but like it's a very arcadey, flying game, so that, you don't black out when you do incredible turns in your sort of F-14. But it still has like realistic visuals, like the planes look photorealistic a lot of the time. And there's like bits of kind of, beautiful kind of, sort of cloudy bits on the wings as you kind of scream around, like doing banking and stuff like that. Just going down Lloyd's and and but over time, like I've realized,
we
like
played it on multiplayer. Yeah, it's an online banking.
Very good.
But like I do know that like the levels, what you can do in any given kind of flying kind of mission, there's not a lot you do. You go somewhere, you fly somewhere. Flying is generally quite tedious, and then you shoot down some stuff. No, in general, like you just go somewhere. Like,
right.
What can you do in a flying game? You fly from the start point to the place where you're meant to go. You have a little bit of a fight, and then you maybe go somewhere else, and maybe you bomb a tank, and then you come, and then like mission done. Like the number of verbs you have in a fucking flying game is not very high.
That's why they need to be in space, because then you can have obstacles floating about.
Yeah, right? And like you can scan stuff in like an X-wing and stuff like that. And but this does a laudable job of kind of making extremely unbelievable things happen. But the problem is that the dogfights in it are effectively you're in a squadron of other planes, and they're meant to be on your side, and they do a lot of shitload of chatting. They don't shoot down a fucking thing, and so you're just fucking hell, I suppose I'll kill all these fucking drones or whatever the fuck, I don't know.
They're all talking about Brexit, and you're there shooting down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a lot of that. But like to preface that though, like there was this fucking story. The story opens with a young female engineer telling the story of her with her gramps. Like she lives with her gramps because her dad was a pilot and he died in a war, and now she's with her gramps and they're fixing up planes on a forgotten kind of, one of those airplane graveyard places in a desert, and she's fixing up planes, and she learns and she fixes up this jet and she goes up. And it just goes on and on and on. You're going, how does this fit with the fact that, like, am I going to be her? Like, is the plane that she's, is that going to be that? And then you're in the first, then suddenly you're in this kind of incredibly, militaristic sort of, like, war interface, like off films and that, like where there's like readouts, like churning out text in the corner of the screen and circles going on.
Clancy vision.
And now it's proper Clancy vision, exactly. And you're being briefed by a stern military man. And then I don't think I'm her anymore because this doesn't sound like what Gramps would sound
Gramps?
like.
Where have you gone?
and no, you're not. You're someone called Trigger. And you're going to be just going off.
Are you a horse?
And a war has started. Yeah. And a war has started between, and I had to write this down because and I'm sure this is all part of the series, but holy shit, the names of places in this fucking game. So, and I don't even know what side I am. I don't know what the side the bad guys are. I don't know where anything is, but one side I think is called,
as a horse might not,
Usia. Another side is Erusia, and there's an Ocean as well. Like an Ocean might be one of the sides.
Ocean, Alex.
Are they doing it like
Ocean, O-S-E-A-N, Ocean. I think that might be one of the sides.
Ocean.
And it might be Eurasia.
They're trying to do Eurasia, Oceania,
now,
1984.
So like, it took me like quite a few long cutscenes before I realized that, okay, right. So one side is meant to be the Yanks, and like they've got American sort of sounding names of things. And then the other side of this continent is like Europe. I don't know. Certainly that was kind of triggered by the fact that like I noted down 2 of the place names of where I've flown over. One of them is called Chopinburg or Chopinburg or Chopinburg.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, okay. And Zapland. Holy
Lapland
shit.
of lasers.
This is like, and obviously this is a Japanese game, but
Yeah.
good lord, the names of places in this, like, it's almost wonderful. It's almost an art piece for like the sheer, like, insanity of the names. And it's really hard to follow who's shooting who what side you're meant to be on, and what's going on.
You've probably seen it. There's a wonderful, I think it's from an 80s baseball game made in Japan, where it's a list of like the generated American names for men. And it's the best thing ever. It's people called like Sleeve McDykel.
Oh, I know the one. Yeah. That's such a good,
And it's perfect in a way. It's better than, it's better than getting it right.
It is totally in that kind of, in that culture. And like, you can see that somebody who, like, it's been translated professionally, but they haven't been able to weed out all of the bizarreness. Like, so one of the the girl character, this mechanic, she says she gets imprisoned for some fucking reason.
Cause she made a jet and then flew it around.
It's not against the law to make a jet.
It probably is.
I don't know.
It's a military.
But actually, it's because the war has started, and I don't know. Oh, fucking who
The
cares?
rules are off.
She gets sent to prison. The first line of the next cutscene is, "Just how penal is this penal colony?"
Just how penal is this colony?
Just how penal is this penal colony?
Jesus Christ, who says that?
This is the mechanic.
Oh God,
who gets captured.
Jesus.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's grim.
Like, well, no, but it's. I don't think it's not
It's an
intentional.
error.
It's not.
Yeah.
I
It's more
don't
like
know.
how-
There's no winking eye. Like, this
right.
is like, this is just a straight up. Whoops. Like, I don't
What,
know.
they're trying to say just how prison is this prison?
Yeah.
Is it more
No,
like
that is
how,
what it's meant to be.
you know, just how of a penalty is this penalty, right?
Yeah, like,
is what they're
how-
trying to say, right? Like,
Yeah.
how much am I being punished?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, okay, fine. You can say that without saying the word penal.
Oh yeah, like
Can,
you definitely
maybe should.
can and should. But it's also, so that sets up the idea that kind of like, this isn't, you know, it's an arcade kind of, fight sim, but also it's kind of mad what happens in it as well. So, the Arsenal bird attacked me.
Oh no.
And the Arsenal bird, it turns out, is a giant, massive flying kind of thing with just basically just a wing. And out of it come all these drones that come and attack me. And then and it's one of those games where you go, oh Christ, there's loads and loads of drones. It's going to take ages to shoot down. Cause you have loads of missiles and you can be up there for years and years. Like, and you just shoot down and shoot down and shoot down and shoot down. And your wing friends are not doing anything. And like, but it's
You've demoted them to wing friends.
wing friends.
They're not wing mates anymore.
Well, because of
Wing acquaintances.
because of a thing that happens in the story, they're not my wing friends anymore.
Oh no.
Oh no.
So, but like, despite all of this, there's something, it's so gorgeous and the feel of the flying is so good. I switched from the basic, flight mode, which is where you kind of, on the stick, you just go left and you fly left and so on. I changed that to the expert mode, whatever it is, which is, you know, you bank and then you pull up to turn, which I changed it to. It's really sort of twitchy, and the planes are so beautifully sort of responsive that it's gorgeous. And flying, there's a structure in it. There's what do they call it? The space lift or something?
Oh, like space elevator.
The space elevator. Someone's built a fucking space elevator. So we go there. Fuck yes, we go there. Not into space, unfortunately, yet. Maybe we do in the future. But like, you fly around the bottom of this space elevator and it's all loads of superstructure and, you know, and you go a nice speed where you can make distance, but you can also fly between things and around things and shooting stuff on the ground while there's stuff flying above you. But the coolest thing about it actually is at the end where you get full replays of what you did. The first replay is actually in 3D, like through like a sort of a dramatic camera, sort of with you shooting shit down. The explosions are awesome. And it's very good at ensuring that when you blow stuff up, it isn't miles away. Somehow it always keeps it close to you. So you're often flying through the explosion after you've done it. And like, you can see the thing that's like falling away. Like, it's really good at dramatic moments. And you're going to go, oh yes, that's nice.
I mean,
but the cooler thing actually is afterwards you go back into Clancy Vision and then you see, this replay of, zoomed out with you as like just an arrow against a kind of a dark blue background with a kind of like a swooshy line behind you. And you can zoom out and you can just see where you went.
Oh.
So you know when you're doing, when you're in a dogfight and you kind of think, where I'm going is fucking random. Who knows where we've ended up after all that kind of twisting and turning. In here, like you actually see, and you see that actually, like that moment where you decided to take out, you noticed there's a plane that, an enemy that had gone towards the thing you meant to be protecting, and you zip back to get it, and you got it, and then you zoop back to where they were. Like it's incredible space. There's stuff's happening all over the place, and you're moving around it. And that was something I always used to love about sort of X-Wing and TIE Fighter, where you could go out to the map of the area, and like it was 3D, and you could see where stuff would, you can make a plan as to what you should be doing next. We've got to defend the bombers. Oh shit, their bombers are going to attack our thing. And you have to make a decision, right? Shit, I've got to book it over there. In this, like, it isn't quite as apparent during play, but it's so nice to see it after the event that it wasn't as sort of fucked up as random as you thought. And like, you can see the points you died, and there's this really nice cross over the thing that you just shot down. So it's like, I don't think I'm going to play very much more of it, but like, there's a lot of kind of pleasure in sort of facing what it's done so far.
I might put that on my Steam wish list for a sale at some point.
Oh yeah, like when it comes up for sale,
holiday.
I would say go for it if you have any interest in sort of bombing around
I think.
And yeah.
Want to
and
take
it
down
is
those
gorgeous.
Zackland loyalists, and, ideology,
Zackland.
whatever it may be.
Oh, so good. And
We've always been at war with Zapland.
You sold me on it, even though like it sounds tedious in many.
And it's also it's a game also like where you can instantly die because you didn't realize how close you were to the ground, and you decided to do to get out of the way of a because you're being shot at all the time, and you can dodge stuff, but that means a bit of aeronautics, and I have died a lot now, and the checkpoints are not friendly.
Right. Can you eject?
No, maybe. I don't see why that would help.
I mean, I don't know. I always
I'd live the rest of my life.
I'd live my story in the desert, building jets out of scrap. No, I asked because I've told this story on the PC Gaming podcast many years ago, but like one of my earliest gaming memories was with a flight sim. It was like an early F-16 flight sim. It was 3D, it was polygonal.
Was it filled in 3D?
It was filled in 3D,
cool.
But the cities were just 2D maps, just kind of on the flat.
Yeah.
But my cousin, like, they had like, it was in the era where you had like, perhaps if you're lucky, a family PC in the hall, those communal thing. And, my cousin went into like people were in a different room and said, watch this. And, he booted up this game, and it was, mind blowing graphics at the time. It was incredible, the sense of, being in a 3D space and flying a plane. And it almost seemed real in my kind of childish imagination. And then he flew really close to the ground, and then he flipped the plane upside down.
Oh yeah.
And then he ejected directly downwards into the map, and it left like a little stain. And I was like, yes! I love video games forever now.
That was
so good.
Everyone's got their uncle under a bridge moment.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yours was upside down cousin ejection.
It was. That's my origin story. That's my PC gaming origin story.
What's yours, Chris?
I think I have like some experiences as well, but mine was like the sort of the lonely detonation of a distant MiG, like in like F-14 or something like that. Like, I don't really have any kind of like interpersonal. I don't think anyone ever sort of, took me by the shoulder and said like, and now I will show you, one day all of this can be yours, Simba, to go back to the Lion King for some reason. Like, it was very much something I discovered by myself and I couldn't really do.
Nobody could play any of those games.
Yeah, no, I think my most powerful memory is the abiding memory of what an achievement simply making it react to me was. So like, I've taxied me, like, maybe the 3 times I ever took off. And then, realizing that the appropriate engagement range, you're right, moving those explosions closer to the player is a good idea. Because like, even getting a little bit better and more adept with them and realizing that like, planes don't fight like in Star Wars, the film I like. No. They fight from 6 miles away from each other. And, in a realistic military sim, it's like, you fire a missile from 6 miles away and someone's like,
oh, this is a game
sufficient.
Where
come home.
You could shoot down other planes with your machine gun thing. You can totally do that in
It's
this
not
one.
just like
That's
guided
the measure
missiles.
of this thing. Like,
Yeah.
I was always like with like F-16, F-14, all those games, they had miniguns or whatever, you know, like guns on them.
God knows why.
I've only ever seen another plane as a pixel. Like, how does anybody shoot that?
I was always fascinated by Microsoft Flight Simulator as well, which was a kind of like really not quite like you couldn't train someone with it, but it had that air of being almost like an instruction manual for how to actually fly a Boeing 767 or something. My dad loves planes and has like model plane collections and has always loved planes. And that was always like a fascinating series for me that you'd fly over and be like, oh, there's the Eiffel Tower. And it was like 5 polygons, but it's like, oh my God,
I'm there.
I'm there.
Yeah.
I feel like I've traveled all this distance and they have beautifully modeled dashboards and all the dials and all the flicks and switches above you. And, that's kind of like faded away. I guess there are still brilliant sim games, but I really miss flight sims, proper commercial air space flight sims.
Yeah, there's like, I think it's the balance of utter like photoreal nerdery, like, you know, rivet for rivet nerdery, and a bit of drama where you can eject it into the ground as well.
Yeah, or try and do a loop.
I think, yeah, for me, those military sims were always like a great simulation of like being really bad at being in the army. Like the illicit thrill of just not being very good at being in the army at all. Having had no training. Indeed. Shall we do questions from questions?
Yeah, yes. Yes.
Well, actually the answer is no.
Oh.
At least for now, because I wanted to take a moment, to return to a very good question, we received on the last episode of the podcast. All 3 of us were there. And that I've not been able to get out of my head for a week. And that question is, Rich or Garfield? And I appreciate that last week we approached this in a way that we expected. Would you rather be Rich or Garfield? This week I want to take a different tack as we approach round 2 of Richard Garfield. Rich or Garfield?
You see, I didn't realise, this is probably quite obvious to people, I don't know anything about Garfield. I didn't realise that Garfield's owner was called Rich. Is that true?
It's not.
It's called John.
Oh, I've invented a completely different metafiction in my head since that podcast happened around Garfield.
Maybe
Sorry, I
that's
didn't mean to
Marmaduke's? Is that Marmaduke's?
I don't know.
I mean, who can say? No
anyway.
one. So in this, Tom won last week's round of Rich or Garfield.
Did I?
By invoking Richard Garfield,
Right.
which is how this ends. This week, a different rule set.
It's like Mornington Crescent, where the first person to say Richard Garfield wins.
Yeah. This week, I'm going to have you two go head to head in another round of Rich or Garfield.
Okay.
I'm going to read to you some quotations. These are either quotations from Garfield
Or Richard Garfield.
or the one of the world's wealthiest men. Is this quotation from someone rich, or is it from Garfield? I'm going to start off.
This.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Quiz time.
We're going to start off with a nice little easy warm-up one.
Do we buzz in, or are you asking?
Well, I'm going to get your
right.
both answers from both of you, and then I will say who's right.
What if I just say what Alex says?
Well, you both get a point.
Mutual destruction.
I can't believe you're criticizing this game.
No, let's do it. Let's do it. It's quiz time in the Crank Crowbar. Let's do it.
Okay, quote 1. I love lasagna.
Oh, is that Bill Gates?
Tom?
I'm going to go Garfield.
It's Garfield.
Yes.
That's a point for Tom Senior. How about this? Who said, I'm not known for my compassion?
Elon Musk.
Some really bad American newspaper magnate of the 1930s.
That was Garfield. Tom Senior leads 1 point ahead.
Okay.
Next, who said, a lot of people think the great outdoors is the area between your front door and a taxi.
That's got to be Garfield.
I mean, I'm going to go Garfield as well, for sure.
That's Michael Bloomberg.
God damn it.
Fuck's sake.
Tom leads by a solitary point. And only because Alex decided to throw the obvious one in the bin.
This is actually still considerably more exciting than the Super Bowl this year, so I think we're doing quite well.
All right. Who said, life's not fair. Get used to it.
That's like, I think that's a Musk or someone like that, isn't it?
I'm going to need a name, Alex.
Get used to it. Get used to it. Who's someone? Oh, this rings a real bell.
Get used to it. Phil Mitchell.
Is it Bezos? I'm going
Bezos. Tom, your answer?
I'm going to say Garfield.
That's Bill Gates.
He's meant to be a nice guy.
One.
Well-
He does the vaccines and saves people.
The world is getting better day by day, and here's a vaccine. Life's shit. Get used to it.
Life's not fair. Get used to it. Bill Gates. Okay. Who said? So that's just towards 1 point to Tom. Who said, "If you're patient and wait long enough, nothing will happen"?
I think that's Garfield in a philosophical moment.
Tom,
If you're patient and you wait long enough, nothing will happen.
It does sound a bit like a hungry entrepreneurial
doesn't
kind
it?
of line, doesn't it?
Yeah, to make things happen, go and take that
going to
opportunity.
need final answers from both of you.
Can I just say, just a Gennaro Rich dude?
You're going to go for Rich.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. Make things a little bit easier. It's acceptable to say Rich or Garfield. I think that's respect.
Oh, okay, so you don't have to come up with the person.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an extra point.
Oh.
If you get the person. How about
Okay,
that?
okay,
How about
okay.
that? We're designing the game on the fly.
Bonus round.
Alex, your choice?
I'm going Garfield because I think I see the way your mind works.
I'm going to go with Rich.
That's Garfield.
Yeah! It's even Stevens.
We're one all. Next, who said, "It's better to hang out with people better than you"?
Rich.
Because
that feels like sort of like a very, very humble brag.
I also feel like Alex has just tuned onto Chris's wavelength, and I'm piggybacking off on
Right,
that.
okay.
To try and
Does
say
anyone
that.
want to try and
Guess who it is.
escalate onto a name?
I don't like this person. Would I be right not to like this person?
I'm going to shrug.
Okay. Don't know.
What's the word again?
It's better to hang out with people better than you.
Ken Levine.
It's Warren Buffett. But you both get a point for Rich. So 2-2 now.
Sorry, Ken.
Next, we enter the dying hours of Rich or Garfield. As I ask, who said, "The meek shall inherit squat"?
Dilbert.
I think that following a quite anxiety producing incident with Bill Oddie, not Bill Oddie, Bill Oddie, his pet dog.
That ruthless capitalist. Bill Oddie.
Is your answer Bill Oddie? Bill
Fuck
Oddie
it.
or Dilbert? The answer's Garfield.
That's where I was going, but then I thought I wanted to say Bill
Okay,
Oddie.
fine. All right. Moving on. Who said, "I'm a big fan of all-you-can-eat plans"?
Fuck.
It's Garfield up
Gotta
and
be
all over this
Garfield.
shop.
2 votes for Garfield?
Garfield.
That's Jeff Bezos.
Good Lord.
I'm bad
I
at this,
didn't
Alex.
realise that Garfield had such...
Range. I didn't realize how easy this quiz was going to be to produce. All right. Penultimate question. We're still drawn 2-2, I believe. So this matters now, if it didn't matter before. Who said, "The most active thing about me is my imagination"?
I think that's Garfield, and he's lying down in his bed and he's done nothing all day, but he's trying to, suggest that he's more active than
Tom?
you think.
Snoopy.
I'll take this seriously. It's Garfield. Alex is ahead.
Shit.
3 for 2.
Damn,
All right.
crap.
You got one chance to pull this back to a draw.
Okay.
An even win. If you can.
If I get it right.
If you get it.
That's just, it is a rich man.
Or well.
Or woman.
Yeah. Who said, "Things don't turn up in this world until somebody turns them up"?
That is a rich person stepping on the head of a homeless person, turning them over and taking the shiny penny.
So you're going for
beneath.
Rich?
Yeah, their splayed body.
Going to get a name?
No.
Okay. Tom?
What was the quote again, sorry?
Things don't turn up in this world until somebody turns them up.
Could totally be Garfield, though.
I mean, yeah.
He's found something underneath it.
He's a kind of chameleonic figure, apparently. You could be any ultra rich. Things like, until you turn them up. Some sort of...
He's talking about John's shoes, maybe? Or no, his trousers.
Stop helping Tom, Alex.
Yeah.
He's got to... He's got one chance.
I've got to punt for Rich and name a name just to have a chance of getting ahead. So it's going to be Rich, and it's going to be Nigel Farage.
The answer is US President James Garfield.
Oh,
The answer was Rich and Garfield.
good one.
Good finish.
But that's Alex's winner.
How long did you look for quotes from Richard Garfield?
There aren't very many. Thank you for playing Richard Garfield. I mean, Rich or Garfield.
What do I win?
You win, and I'll buy you a copy of Artifact. Actually, well, it's 1-1 now. Tom's won a game of Rich or Garfield. Alex has won a game of
we
Rich
need
or
a third
Garfield.
round at some point.
Apparently.
Maybe.
Shit.
You've got a week to come up with a new reflection.
Yeah.
Thank you for indulging me as we embarked on this new journey in podcasting. We will now do questions that readers have sent, listeners have written. David writes, I have a meta question for you. Just how long after these Ask Us a Question tweets do we have to get our question in before we've missed that week's episode boat? Well, the answer is, kind of doesn't matter when you tweet us. We tend to put the tweet out for questions if we're running low on questions, and this tops up the hopper. And then we go through the hopper and decide which ones we feel like we can answer, basically.
The fruity ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere between 9 and 10 p.m. on the given day of recording, which varies.
Generally a Wednesday,
which could be generally, but it could be, who knows?
Could be a Tuesday.
Yeah, we just even them up. So the answer is good luck.
And the main guidance for questions that tend to work is obviously if it's stuff we've been asked a lot, and we always get questions we've been asked a lot, and it's because people don't realize we've been asked a lot, and that is obviously not your fault, but it happens. But the other thing is just keeping it short and dumb.
It's a good guide.
Next, Myrtle writes, in a past episode, Chris talked about how Bungie made great skybox scenes, usually big ships hovering in the sky in both Destinies. What are your favourite screenshot moments from games that give you an amazing skybox or stationary background scene? Start again. My faves come from The New Order.
Uncharted comes directly to mind because they are good at distant jungles. But I'm wondering whether like the skybox is becoming a bit of a dying art because games are so kind of freewheeling and expansive, and you can generally kind of walk off up the mountain in the distance. It's a sort of regular thing these days.
Yeah,
Todd Howard killed the skybox.
Have to have an edge though, don't they? There's got to be edges to the world and something beyond that. Like Anthem runs up into this as well.
Yeah.
Some of my favourite skyboxes actually were what's the map called in Unreal Tournament? Facing
I was going to
Worlds?
say this. I was Facing Worlds, yeah.
Yeah, and it's got the Earth just stretched out below you, which is obviously just a big 2D skybox. And those skyboxes were super effective in those days when you couldn't render a huge amount of 3D geometry, giving you a sense of scale and space. And it was almost more meaningful then than it is now, where it's so blasé.
That was the answer I was going to say.
Oh.
So, good. Next question comes from Alistair, who writes, best opening to a game. For me, nothing has ever beaten the music and panning camera of the original Homeworld. Tom's having a big drink.
Yep. Homeworld's a great shout. I love the start of Mass Effect 2. The bit with Normandy, spoilers for Mass Effect 2, but this beautiful ship that you've kind of gotten to know over the course of the first game, and it's kind of part of your team, and it's where your family lives, and it just gets brutally shattered. And there's a brilliant moment where you're walking in your spacesuit through the Normandy that you recognise so well, and it's got giant holes in the side because lasers have been through it, and everything's just turbo screwed. And it's that the moment of despair that happens right at the start of the game, and you know you're going to get to build it back up. But for me, it's quite an emotional, really emotional gut punch to have that open Mass Effect 2.
I think for me, it's Bayonetta 1. Which is a game that has nothing like, well, it's non-stop amazing, like just brilliant the entire way through, but it has both one of the best openings and one of the best endings. Because it opens like, it doesn't really stop opening. That's its secret. Like, you know, the Lord of the Rings problem is won't stop ending. Whereas Bayonetta won't stop doing like pre-credits amazing sequences. So like, you fall out of the sky towards the ground while fighting angels in slow motion on Big Ben. Then you are dancing through a graveyard after a man has a big piss on the game director's grave. Then you're in a car when time stops as a huge cargo plane crashes full of monks, crashes into a highway, and you have to fight your wife? Who knows?
Yeah.
It's very, very good. And yeah, no, it's I don't think there's any question for me.
Yeah, it's good.
Alex?
I've gone completely blank.
Good. I'll relieve you of this pressure by talking about Rob, who writes, are there games/genres where you prefer the experience of bumbling around, not really understanding the underlying mechanics, to the point of losing interest the more you understand? I always like Civ games the best when I'm playing like a permanently surprised baby. I
actually think that captures my attitude to most complicated games. I've been,
why is this like this?
I've been tinkering around in, Dwarf Fortress, for the first serious time.
Yeah.
Ever, over the last few weeks. And, I've tried it multiple times in the past, and, it's only since, but I hadn't actually played it since, playing, RimWorld, which obviously takes almost all of what Dwarf Fortress kind of, how it works and makes it into a very visual graphic and, basically makes it readable. And with that understanding, I realized I sort of basically, I do understand exactly how Dwarf Fortress works. I just need to get through the interface, and I have been, and I've been having fun. But I'm kind of nervous of the moment when I do understand enough that there is a moment for me in the games where, like complicated games, where when I understand enough, I can see how much I'm expected to do and how much I sort of like my own creativity needs to go into it, and the investment that it all requires. And I tend to, because I'm a lazy, good for nothing, I tend to kind of get a bit frightened by that and switch off. And I'm wondering when and if that's going to happen with Dwarf Fortress. At the moment, it's been fun, but like it's dizzying depths. I don't know. And I suppose also there's an element where like Dwarf Fortress is always sort of, exciting for the stories, the crazy stories that would come out of it. And these strange names and things. And now I've been playing it, I can see that all the names are the same, like Boat Turned and, those strange places that the kind of classic stories have kind of been set in, and like, okay, I can see the algorithm now, and, the slight bit of the magic has gone. I'm sure it will come back, but yeah, or maybe I'll talk about it more in coming.
I think I get this a little bit with competitive multiplayer games that I get into, where I really, in any context, I really enjoy the period of like, I'm learning this for myself and figuring out what's good and developing strategies. And I'm always a little bit afraid of the shouty 8 things you need to know to be good at Apex Legends or whatever YouTube videos, because I know I need to watch them, because the aggregate experience and wisdom of people who are better than me is how I ultimately learn. But if I watch them and find out that the way you play that is good is not how I like playing, then I can never escape the sort of, a risk, I get trapped in like wanting to play like me and wanting to do better and knowing that there's a different way and I don't want to do it. And that sort of, scrub frustration, as a band of, thinking would put it, can actually kill the game for me. But like I had the happy experience the other day of watching something like that about Apex Legends and actually being more excited to play it because I discovered a bunch of things I didn't know you could do, having discovered things previously. And so it can, it can go the other way as well. But there's definitely sometimes one of those moments where you're like, I enjoyed this more when I thought I understood it rather than did.
Yeah, that's really true. Not with Dwarf Fortress, but I get this with 4X games where there's, a thin veneer of fantasy over a lot of number crunching in 4X games. And as soon as you as soon as you sort of like figure out what the game's really wants from you, and you realize that, Queen Victoria doesn't really give a shit about how you run your society, but whether this number is actually where it should be for this type of Civ to like you, then it shatters the whole fantasy and kind of breaks it. So I think skirting along the surface in a lot of games is actually the way they are designed to be played. I'm sure the designers don't want you to see the whole thing as a purely number crunching exercise. There's a fantasy they've built around it that they want you to engage with, and the numbers facilitate that. So yeah, I'd certainly get that with turn-based strategy games, that kind of thing.
Our next question comes from Benjamin, who writes, "Oh no! 2 games have swapped art styles. One of them has been vastly improved and the other has been horribly diminished. What games could I be talking about?"
That's a good question.
So I'm going to posit Darkest Dungeon and Slay the Spire. I think that's how you make Slay the Spire amazing and kill
Yes.
Darkest Dungeon.
No, that's a good shout.
Yeah, agreed. Although I've grown very fond of Slay the Spire's funny little men.
But they wouldn't be appropriate for underground horror time.
Dub, 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 dub. Dub, dub, dub.
It's like Borderlands 2 and Mass Effect. I guess you could pick a lot of art styles that just jar, but I don't know. I don't believe that actually. No, that's a bad answer. Because I don't want to see Mass Effect in Borderlands art style. That would be horrible. Horrible.
Project Cars and Mario Kart Deluxe.
That's a good Project Cars would be after that.
I think that's how you get me to play Project Cars.
Yeah.
I just like seeing Mario going around, every bit of stubble on his face as he kind of screams around. It's kind of like oil slicked kind of.
Madden 19 and Blood Bowl.
Yeah, I'm trying to like find 2 games of different genres where it would have this kind of interesting effect.
Dear Esther and Yoshi's Woolly World.
Which game would be elevated?
I think both.
Maybe it's just better for everyone. Better for everyone.
Oh, wow.
I really desperately want that to exist now.
Yeah.
Tekken 7 and Xenoclash.
Ooh, that'd actually be rad.
Yeah, I think
that ruins
it fucks up Xenoclash pretty badly.
Yeah. I think this benefits games have good art style. Cause, you know, like.
It's not their appeal.
Yeah.
Broken Sword 2 and Unreal Tournament.
I really want to play that.
I'll play both of those games. That's the thing. I mean,
Yeah, so, I don't know which one is.
George Stobbart in Paris shooting the shit out of someone with a grenade launcher is a thing I'd like to see.
Yeah, that's
Great.
great.
Hopping about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's very good. I'm not, no, let's move on. We can sit and think about that.
Good question. Thank you.
Very good question. Ellie writes, "I'm a Civ bore. I've been enjoying the new expansion which threads ecological concerns and climate change into R4X. Where else have people smuggled bits of science and enlightenment into games? And what's your fave?"
He kind of resisted, but Zachtronics games, kind of like.
They always teach you something.
Yeah. Kind of. I mean, like, you know, they play fast and loose. They are a setting.
Yeah.
Science is a setting rather than an encyclopedia in them. But like, I think if you want to understand what programming is, I think you can, if you understand things about chemistry.
I mean, I can't say that Kerbal Spacecraft. Kerbal Spacecraft.
You can't say that.
I can't say that.
Because it
does not exist. Kerbal Space Program doesn't sneak science in. It is a game about science. And, that's one of the reasons why it's brilliant.
I think, I mean, this may be an obvious answer, but the thing people always return to is the drill sergeant conversation from Mass Effect 2. The person explaining why you don't fire a gun in space. And, you know, because eventually it will hit something. And so every time you fire a gun in space, you are deciding to break something somewhere eventually.
Yeah. Are
you okay with that? It's a really nice, like, it's a little side conversation in that game, but it's a really nice bit of sort of observational sci-fi writing. And actually, I think, I saw people complain that, so the very end of Mass Effect 3, not really a spoiler, there's a lot of space guns being fired at a planet.
Yeah.
Well, at things that are in front of a planet. And I saw some people complaining that this is like, completely contrary to what that person says. But actually, I think that's deliberate. I think it's almost a reference to that conversation. It's like, this is how, it becomes a way of illustrating how desperate things are.
Yeah.
That like, you attack from the bad angle. Not the angle where bullets whiz off into space, but from the angle where you end up hitting the planet you're trying to save. because that's how bad things
The
are.
only way.
When the space crabs arrive.
When the space crabs arrive.
The Turbo space crab.
Kerbal space crab program. Gone wrong.
I've been watching The Expanse Series 3.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been quite nervous about the number of bullets that are fired by one of the spaceships.
They're all about their flak cannons, aren't they? And
shooting all sorts of stuff into space at very high velocity.
Oh dear.
No.
I don't think we necessarily got towards like a worthy cause there, really, but that's harder to find, I think. So much so that we failed. John writes, Dear Great and Subpar, I heard you guys like SWAT 4, as do I. It still holds up after all these years. What happened to that genre? The slowish, deadly, single-player tactical shooter that rewards planning and thinking instead of just reflexes. Will games like this ever come back? Are they still being made and played in some corner of Steam? Love the podcast. John. I think there are multiple things like Intruder, which have a bit of this, but also really wonky physics and falling over.
Yeah, there are definitely indie things that are doing it. The names escape me. There are, I think there are a couple.
What's the one where you actually plan the heist with your team, drawing stuff on a map, just in the first part of the heist, and then you enact it?
Is this a new game or like an old one?
A new indie game.
Because it used to be.
I don't think it's come out yet.
The very old Rainbow Six games used to be exactly like that, where you draw like routes in, and a lot of it was commanding AI that would not do what the fuck you said at all. As it was like those games were totally broken in lots of ways, but the fantasy was really cool.
Yeah, I actually can't think of a modern example of this. Right, and if you know one, we can read it out next week.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think there's something, I think it's again that simulationist thing of like, games have found ways of getting you to that experience faster, but that was a really specific way of using shooter dynamics to make you think. Like all of the kind of breach and clear games I can think of now are strategy games, like Frozen Synapse.
Yeah, the
Door
turn-based
Kickers
stuff.
Door Kickers, yeah. But no, in terms of the extremely tense, high lethality first person bad men in a 3-story building genre.
No. Like even the Rainbow Six games that, like New Vegas. Was it New Vegas? No, Vegas.
Yeah.
What it was called.
Vegas, just Vegas.
Just Vegas. It was wasn't Fallout game.
A New Vegas, yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, like those games, even though they didn't have the kind of planning phase, they were super, really fun co-op experiences. Like the whole co-op campaign where you breach a room and someone put a little scanner under it and kind of count people and mark them, and then you'd breach from an unexpected angle, you'd pick your targets. Yeah, that's kind of gone away, hasn't it? It's, it's a really fun co-op experience.
I guess Siege has been sort of like a bit of a, sort of a
hyper fast paced.
Because that is.
It is still a game of breaching and clearing, but
it's very kind of reactions based, it's very tactical, but very reactions based.
Also, as the sole player, you're not in control of the entire squad or, making those plans or anything.
Yeah.
Unless you're just very bossy.
I'd like to play that type of game again. I like those.
Sean writes, Hello. Is it worth it to get a ticket to the 2019 Game BAFTAs despite not being a game developer or in the industry, but just someone with a free Thursday? I don't really know what to expect if I do go. I just think it might be a fun experience. Cheers. Probably not. Alex?
I would say no. Like, I don't know what the sort of.
No, I've never been to the BAFTAs. I'm not sure.
It's a dinner.
Like. It's just
it's a dinner, and then you watch people announce awards announce. People go up and do a little speech. It's like
it's one of those.
And also, I didn't know there was a public component to it.
I wasn't aware if there was a public component to it either. But if there is, and this is a big if, I think if you went with some friends or your partner or somebody, and it was just a sort of dinner and seeing people you might know from the video game industry working up on stage to collect things, that could be fun.
I guess.
But it's not like, there's not, and I think it's a very high quality awards show, but it is that, and the awards shows tend to be sort of for the people in the room, to some extent, right? It's a celebration of those people and a chance for those people to catch up with peers and things, so.
Yeah, I don't think the BAFTA awards are a place where games get announced or anything like that.
No.
So it's not that type of event.
No, but nor is it necessarily somewhere where you're going to go and necessarily like get to meet people, because it really is just, it's nobody's there in work mode, right? Where it's like, it's not like something like Resd, say, where you might go chat to a developer after a Q&A or something like that. It's very much people are in their leisure time going to an awards show and hanging out with peers and friends. So I don't think it wouldn't be necessarily a fun thing from a public point of view unless you were just there for the dinner.
I don't even want to go. Anyway, I've never actually been. I've judged it quite a few times. Can't be fun.
As in, you've been a judge, not you just.
Yeah, just been like, that was a shit show.
It's usually good.
Yeah, it seems like a really nice event.
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, when we're saying probably don't go to the BAFTAs, it's not because I think the BAFTAs is a very good
event. Like, I think it's a good thing. Meh.
Just quack like a duck. Just quack like a duck. Our final question comes from Ben, who writes, "Good afternoon, folks. I've recently started listening to the CNC podcast and I'm already a big fan. I chat all things video games with a fairly diverse crew of mostly older, late 30s, early 40s people. And while we approach games from many different angles, one thing we all completely agree on is that every single online shooter game would be vastly improved by removing all scopes. Having to actually be under threat when you're engaging someone, as opposed to just clicking on them from halfway across the map, feels like it'd be a vastly different play experience, and for our group in particular would only improve things. We'd love to hear your thoughts." Ben from Australia.
Yeah.
I disagree, but I agree with the problem. But I think it can be solved while retaining variable engagement ranges.
So the first thought I had was, this is why World War II games are good. Because you got weaponry which is inherently less scopy, with some scopies to give a bit of variety. Second thought I thought is
cheeky scopies.
Is Destiny, because it has a number of scopy guns, but like most guns are fairly short range.
Also, the PvP maps on Destiny are not large enough for scopes to be like you're
very controlled. You know if you're going into the bad corridor.
Yes, exactly.
Like it's kind of your fault for going into the very long corridor.
You know what to expect. Yeah. And go up with a shotgun and deal with it. Yeah.
So
a different angle.
And you meant,
I was going to say, I think, I agree with the problem, particularly in like things like PUBG, where you can get you hear the crack of a KAR rifle from miles away and your game is over.
Battlefield as well.
Battlefield, people try and get around it with like Battlefield 5 tries to get around it with the now time-honored tradition, like scope glint, where if you're aiming a sniper scope, you may as well have like a fucking like semaphore light on the front of your gun.
Yeah.
But the game that I've been playing recently that I think includes this in its design, handles it extremely well, is Apex Legends. And because it absolutely has very long range guns, it has very, very long view distance, and you can see people from effing miles away. It also has quite, but it handles it in a few interesting ways. One is that it has quite, aggressive bullet drop. So simply landing a shot from very far away is an enormously skilled and often lucky thing. So that's a thing introduced immediately. It's hard, which means you should be rewarded for pulling it off. It means you can't reliably, it's not like a hit scan gun where you can reliably kind of plink away at someone. And guns have different, both, bullet drop is, I think I've said this on the pod, relayed to you sort of perfectly on the scope, but bullet velocity isn't. So that's a sort of, there's all these things to learn. So that's good. Second thing that makes it work is that one of the things you will loot immediately, if you can in Apex Legends, is an overshield, and almost everyone has an overshield of some kind or another, which means that I don't believe it's ever possible to be one-shotted by a sniper shot. Like, I have managed to pull off like a serious sniper shot like once in like 50 hours of playing that game, like where I've actually downed someone. And it's because they'd already taken fire and they had stopped to heal and they didn't know I was there. And I had the opportunity to set up the shot and I landed the shot and I hit them in the head and then they were down, not out. And that brings me to the other thing, which is that you're really fast when you're down. And you have a shield, you can have a shield that you can pull up to cover most of your body.
Yeah.
Which means it's actually really, really hard to kill someone with a sniper rifle unless they're already down and not protecting themselves and not moving. Or, or they're the last person on their team and therefore they die immediately when they're down. You can get sniped and it's really bad, but you can then kind of crawl around a corner. And then there's the fact that, because Apex is this game of like corridors and arenas and complicated kind of multi-level environments, often, an engagement is built. The thing I really love about that game, and I think it's really great at, is, one of the most important things, there's a lot of like trying to like clutch a fight with just being very good at Twitch shooting at close range. But all fights eventually collapse to close range. But so much is decided by the opening shot or whatever your plan for engagement is, because not just because it allows you to do damage before the opponent can react, but because it's what reveals your position to literally everybody else. You can hear people from fucking miles away in that game.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
And the sound design is incredible. So if your team decides to sit and take sort of, for all the reasons I've just outlined, slightly ineffective sniper shots from miles away, you are not just failing to do damage, you're probably actively reducing your chances of winning the game because literally everybody knows where you are. Everybody knows where you are. And if the team, like, you know, I've been in situations where we've realized if we don't shoot back, okay, took a couple of hits and we've had to go heal. But if we don't shoot back, the people who are trying to snipe us will be absolutely murdered by the other 5 remaining teams. And we're fine. Cause
just revive each other.
Yeah, we'll just revive each other, get back up. As long as we don't shoot, we haven't revealed ourselves. Like that, I think all of that stuff, and sniping is still good because being able to do damage to people from very far away is good. But all of those factors, I think, make it a really interesting option rather than just being better than the alternative. Sorry, I've just spoken for like 5 minutes on why being far away is interesting, but that's like, I think that's how you balance sniping. And I think that's how you make it work in a big sandbox combat FPS. Yeah. Also, when you can slide on your bum very, 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 very fast, and that makes it much easier to avoid being sniped because you've got a slippery bottom and it's very hard to snipe someone who is on a cool slide all the time. Just ask any Warframe baddie.
Yeah.
And that is all of the sliding on our bums we've got time for this week. If you would like to ask us a question, which is different, you can do that. You can tweet us at Crate and Crowbar. You can also email us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You may find us. I don't know why I'm failing to speak. It's been doing it for like too long.
Takes are running out.
Help.
YouTube.
/Crate and Crowbar.
Save us.
Discord, it exists. Link, website, crateandcrowbar.com. If you follow us individually on Twitter. We still do this bit even though none of us really use it anymore.
Yeah.
And I've started saying it, so I'll finish. You can find me I'm at C Thurston, that's CTHURSTEN.
Hi, Tom Senior. I'm at PCG Ludo. Ludio.
I am at Rotational, ROTATIONAL.
And now we can all go to sleep.
Good night.